You're listening to Bedroom Beethovens, where notable music makers break down stories accompanied by songs and melodies documenting growth through their 10,000 hour journey. And me? Well, my name is Cello, your host.
I am a bedroom Beethoven.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 74 of the podcast.
In my window.
My guest this week is...
So my name is JC, aka Wax Tailor. I'm French, as you can hear with my terrible English accent. And I've shared a lot of collaboration with people like, let's say, Ghostface Killer, Hollow Black, Elzai, Red Rugged Man, and many more.
Cut it out like an unwanted hand in the safe. Through my blinds, every man glimpse and tamper with fate. Tune the world out, shift shade, phantom of space. Random thoughts on the canvas, hold your orbit in place.
In my window, I keep it cracked open just a little so the wind blow. To carry me to places I ain't never been, like Indonesia. So at my leisure, I can float above the leaning tower of Pisa without a visa with this procedure.
While out on instrumental, simmer down now. Heavy mental, take me away. The Calgon.
Thanks for joining me on another journey of a creative's 10,000 hour journey. And ours begins in the country of France, where someone who has been a part of hip-hop culture across 5 decades joins me in the think tank. An individual so musically gifted, I need to break down to a science the art of what he does. You see, hip-hop producers rely on several specific formulas to create sample-based hip-hop, developed with a combination of analysis. This typology of sampling is a conceptual approach to this repertoire. There are 3 main types of samples. There are structural samples, surface samples, and lyric samples. And each of these types has a distinct function in a sample-based track. Structural samples create the rhythmic foundation, surface samples overlay or decorate the foundation, and lyric samples provide words or phrases of text. Wax Tailor would be a combination of all 3, especially using words and text from films and movies from directors he loves and admires. Wax Tailor is someone that needs to be in the studio, a bedroom Beethoven, if you will. He needs the right equipment to hear the right sounds, which in turn produces the right music. But before we dive into his story, I urge you to visit the website bedroombeethovens.com for all the info, past episodes in one neat little hub, and of course wherever you get podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, you know the spiel. Like, comment, subscribe, all of that. And I ask you to do that because it's a free way to help boost the algorithms and visibility of my podcast so more people listen, which in turn means more guests. Bigger guests? Who knows? More opportunities? Maybe. And also as a bonus, Elu Eboka, esteemed music producer and composer, swings by to add a layer to the COVID-19 crisis because once upon a time, just a wee bit before the world was on lockdown in Cape Town, South Africa, Wax Tailor and Elu collaborated, and I thought it would be interesting to find out how the very last close contact musical session went before we all returned to our respective corner in our rooms, all alone, drinking coffee, and waiting for this to be over with. So shout out to Elu. It's very humbling for a guy in the United States like myself to have Wax Tailor from France and Elu from Cape Town to call in, and we can craft these musical stories. And you're in France right now, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm in the U.S. and just like France, you know, we have our share of social and political problems. Our president right now is wanting to open up the country back while our infected is rising, you know, as well as France and you know. I know France is the home base, but we both have some problems right now, so I hope we're all safe.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very weird period we're in.
I know you've been interested in hip-hop culture since the 80s, so as we enter the year 2020, I mean, technically you've been a part of the culture now through 5 different decades, so talk about a 10,000-hour journey, you know?
Yeah, you want to depress me?
Well, just to give you some context, you know how like when you discovered hip hop, it was a period of studying and learning and a lot about the music. And I think your radio show went hand in hand with that. And that's exactly what my mission is with this podcast, because I felt all those meaningful radio stations kind of went away, and there weren't many audio programs that just talk to people one-on-one, where each episode is a building block to learn more about creating, learn more about music, and ultimately about life.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was doing when I was hosting this radio show. It was really about like this love of the music and how to share and just help people discover some stuff at a different area when we had no internet, no no nothing, no cell phone, no. So it was just something else.
Yeah, but I love where I can talk to people who are like, oh, when I heard a song when I was 8, and now it's what I've been doing my entire life. I have a body of work and I make a living out of it. I always think that's fascinating.
Yeah, that's exactly my kind of story. Like, but to be honest, I think like a lot of people from this generation, it doesn't mean that I won't tell you the story like I've always known that I was about to do that. It's clearly not the story. The story isn't just like I like to talk about accidents, the good accidents when you discover a culture, something, there is a shock, and you don't know exactly. It's always kind of weird to think that you've had this meeting with a culture that is coming and that was born so far away from your own country, from everything around you, and just at one point there is something that make your life change about that.
Well, if you were hooked at such a young age, why didn't you learn the music? Because word on the street is you can't read a score.
Yeah, I can't. It's probably I grew up in my family, was really in the working class, and it's not like to say I'm not supposed to be linked with the music, but that's fact. Like it was more about everything around me was more about like do some sports and all that. So it was not really about this kind of culture. And then I think I really came into the culture, into the hip hop culture. I always talk about that this way. Like I never say like rap music. I really talk about the hip hop culture because I think the first door was not like being a beat maker, a composer, whatever. It was just about being part of this thing. So I remember that the first door for me was the break dance. Because that was the thing of the period. We had a TV show in '84 in France. It was kind of the first time we had to something kind of mainstream, but to discover this culture. And as you can imagine, it just disappeared about 6 months after that, because for those people from TV, it was just about fashion. So, but it was like a first door, and I was very obsessed about that. And then it came back with the music and the graffiti and everything. And so I just wanted to be part of the hip hop culture. And I was just trying to find where I could be not good, but let's say like I've tried everything. Like, okay, as a dancer, it's a drama. As a graffiti, it's worst. So where can I do something? So I just began as an MC. And then when I had the opportunity just to create some beats, I just buy some stuff and just begin like that. But it's never been about regular learning music or whatever like that. It was really more about like being part of it and having some ideas. And I don't know, I'm not even able to say one day I've decided to do something. I was just involved.
What about your painting career? How'd that go?
Yeah, for a few days, just time for my friends to say, JC, you should stop that.
So by process of elimination, bam, you found your calling.
Exactly. It's not that I'm good at what I'm doing. It's just it's just the area where I'm not so bad.
Now, the song that hooked you at that young age, around 7 or 8, it wasn't even hip hop. It was rocket.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But like it's kind of cliche, and it's like first, of course, it's the truth, and then also it's like something that a lot of people from my generation concerned with this culture would probably say the same thing, because it was something from coming from nowhere. Like, what is that? Like, I just remember about what is this kind of sound, and just trying to. When this thing appeared, I mean, we were just trying to replicate something and be, what is this kind of sound? So it's really an obsession about that.
I find it funny because when people mention Herbie Hancock, they think greatest jazz musician of all time, but that song was quite different to what he became famous for. That song almost birthed scratch culture, wouldn't you say?
Yes, exactly. With Grand Mixer DST, and it's funny because at this period I had no idea about Herbie Hancock as a jazz musician. Just a small story, but I remember years later, when I think it was 93, I made one of my first live shows with my band at this period, and we were openers for Fred Wesley, famous musician from James Brown. And to be honest with you, at this period, I was still like, I know James Brown, but I don't know who's this guy. And I make the link with Herbie Hancock because I think it's really also the hip hop culture that brought me to discover all those guys, all those great musicians. So this is something really important just to consider what this culture brought to all those people.
Yeah, I'm always gonna know the connection between jazz and hip hop. I think that goes hand in hand. That's like peanut butter and jelly. But you're gonna have to school me on this one. Blues music from the 40s. What do we got? Where do we start? And what inspired you from that era?
I think a lot of things comes also from the great digging. When you begin with this habit, you just search for new kind of sounds. When I say new kind of sounds, like things you haven't experienced before, and I don't know. I mean, it just came from records to records, and one day buying one and a second one, and then there is a moment when you realize that there's always a moment. I don't know how to explain this correctly, but there is also a moment when you realize that you don't listen to some kind of music only for samples, but also just because you like it. Like as an example of that, I remember that in my early years of beatmaker, I was discovering Billie Holiday and sampling her quite a lot. And at one point, I was not able to do it anymore because I had so much respect for her, and it was like something I couldn't touch anymore. You know what I mean? So just to go back to this thing about blues, I couldn't answer that question, but there also it's also about for me it's a lot about periods. Like when I discover some bossa nova or something like that, sometimes it takes me like 2, 3, 4 years just to bring it into my music, and one day I feel like, okay, this is the time I need it. I remember when I went to India for a tour in 2010, I think, and took me something like 2 years after coming back with some Indian music just to use it a little bit and just inject into my music. I'm slow in the process.
Now, like your grandfather, he listens to jazz. Your father listens to rock. Did they eventually come to understand hip hop, or are they pretty stubborn in their musical tastes?
Oh no, they were really into their thing, and also I think it's a lot about like those periods of life when you're a young teenager. I remember when I was younger that my grandfather was listening to jazz music, and I would be really snob to say, "Oh, I really love that." I really hated that. It was a lot like you're a child, and no, it was not my thing. And then I think I also had a period when I didn't really like the rock artist because my father was listening to this, and it was like the rejection, like, you're not supposed to listen to the same kind of music as your parents. So it just came back with the sampling once again, probably when I was something like 15, 16, just coming back to it and just rediscovering things and with a different ear. And but I got to say that even if I was not so much into it earlier, I think there is something that that's still inside of you.
Yeah, I mean, as a kid in France listening to DJ Muggs and the Bomb Squad and RZA, it's like, wow, you must have seemed like an alien to the other kids in the neighborhood.
Yeah, absolutely. Plus, I would say that it's like you said, we're in 2020. Like hip hop is so mainstream; it's everywhere nowadays. Like everybody, it's everywhere. So just go back to early 90s or even like 87, 88 or something like that. People were not even able to spell it correctly. They didn't know what we were talking about. I remember about UTFO, Run DMC, or this period, the first EPMD, and yeah, exactly what you said. I really felt like an alien because even people around me, most of them, they were not listening to this kind of music. So it was kind of special. And I gotta say that it's like I said earlier, it's a lot about kind of accidents and meetings. And I remember like in 88, I had a meeting because I was doing an exchange in with the UK, and I've met with some guy that was a bit older. He was a DJ in London, and he had a lot of 12 at this period, like 7 inches and all that. And it just introduced me to a lot of things that I didn't know. So it just brought me to another level about coming back with some tapes and discovering a lot of 12 at this period. It just brought me into something even more weird for people around me.
Well, now you have this knowledge of hip hop, and you have now this knowledge of how to make music. There's also the factor of how you create, and there are albums like In the Mood for Life where you have to physically visit different locations in the world in order to achieve inspiration for sounds, songs, melodies, what have you. Since we're in a social lockdown right now, have you been having trouble being creative?
Yeah, I'm not sure that it's really so much about being locked, because some friends of mine they came to me and say like a joke, like you're probably not so impact because you live a part of your life like that, like being in the studio. And it's very special. I mean, everything that happened is very special because I'm thinking more about not what we do live right now, but it's like a signal to something. And I'm just thinking about the near future. So it's better now. It's better now. But for the first 10 days, yeah, it was not creative at all.
Yeah, because before lockdown, I think you were in Cape Town, right? That's got to be a beautiful place.
Wow, you're well informed. Yes, I was.
The moment I am referencing here, where I mentioned Cape Town, Africa, and the interesting notion of being able to collaborate with someone right before the pandemic hits, well, I was curious how those series of actions were set in motion. Elu Eboka started out as a songwriter, a music producer making EDM and hip-hop, but he's so much more, as he's also worked extensively, film composing both locally and internationally, coupled with formal training in the Jazz Academy. So the studio that I'm referencing is one that he moved into, allowing him to work from start to finish in both production and recording in his very own studio. So I invite him on the show to talk to us about this experience.
Hey, Cello. Thanks for having me on your show. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have you, sir.
It's also a pleasure to talk about working with Wax. As you know, like I've got my studio in Cape Town, and we just met through email. I'm not actually too sure how he found me, but I'm glad he did, because working with Wax is one of those rare breeds of people who come into the studio with a clear idea of what they want, but at the same time is also very open to discovering something new and letting any sort of possibilities happen. And what was also impressive is that we were working with a singer who actually performs in the street as like a busker, and he was able to just be really patient with her and sort of like help guide her through the track and what it needed, and which is a really difficult thing to do, because being able to record in a studio is not something that happens instantly. Like, it does take time. It takes a certain level of understanding of the systems and working with like a click track and all these technical things. And in my own experience, I've seen a lot of like really good players struggle in the studio environment. So it was great that he was there to support her, because they had only just recently met. And so beyond just meeting Wax, just watching him work was really great to see. And yeah, it's probably one of my favorite sessions in recent memory since the outbreak, because South Africa's gone into complete lockdown mode. But I've been quite lucky in that I don't just have a studio, and I also do production work. I do composing work. So luckily for me, I've still been able to keep busy and, of course, keep food on the table. But it has been a struggle, but I always tell myself that I didn't get into this business because I thought it would be easy. You know, I got into it because I loved it, and despite all the challenges, even when everything was fine, I still wanted to do it. And so this is just one of those new challenges that we as artists and people in the creative industry have to just adapt to, learn to deal with. But I think more importantly than anything is just support each other. You know, if you have a studio and you can help people record, help them record, you know. If you are a performer and someone needs help or in addition to their tracks, then like help them with their tracks. I think now more than ever, it's important just to stay positive, keep working with people, and keep the creativity going, because that's why we're all here anyway.
Yeah, it's a fantastic town, and it's very it's fresh, and it's a good inspiration.
And with that being said, if anybody wants to reach out, you can find me on Instagram at Elu Eboka. That's at ELU EBOKA. Hope to hear from you guys, and keep an eye out for that new Wax Tailor. Thanks, Jello.
My man. Everyone be sure to check him out.
Hello?
Hello. You know, sometimes we're not prepared for adversity.
A few years ago, there were a series of terrorist attacks. I believe a soccer stadium was hit and a concert where I think 100 people died. And I know from your standpoint, you just wanted to hit the road and kind of come to the U.S. But as someone who lived in the U.S., kind of looking at, like, I remember watching the news thinking, well, why Paris? Why France? And it's because Paris tends to be an anti-assimilation city where culture is very segregated and there's a high population of North African immigrants. This coupled with France's like recent involvement in bombing Syria points to why Paris was a target. Was there any truth to that? Like, what do you think the real reason is where people are on pins and needles over the last few years where they can't even leave their house and enjoy music in public spaces anymore?
Wow. It's a very complicated question. The more I think about it, the more I feel like I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, it's a very complex question. It's not to avoid the question again, but it's a very complex question. Those things that happened in France in 2015, that was something, a big trauma. That was a big trauma in my country.
I think, JC, I think what I'm asking is like, because I'm stuck in the U.S., the only way for me to get news about it is to watch the news. And simply, should I even listen to the people on the news? Are they giving me the truth?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. But it's not to say like U.S. news are fake news, like your president would say. No, it's not about that. Like, it's just that it's always very complicated. I remember like in 2005 we had some social riots in France, and some friends of mine in the US, they were like talking about like civil war. And I was like, what the fuck you talk about? Like, it's absolutely not a civil war, but that's the way CNN was reporting it. Actually, it's always more complicated than that. But what happened at this period was just the result of something that comes from far away, and it's not easy to answer this question, because what I could say is not like the truth. It's just my vision. You know, it's like nobody got a truth about this fact, but I just think that it comes from far away, and the thing is that this is the kind of question I could take like 15 minutes to answer, and it would be a bit annoying, but it comes from far away.
Yeah, and since then, like your latest album came out, and as the weeks unfolded, the climate kind of shifted where now governments are forced to make stricter rules and regulations. They monitor citizens more closely and so on. And there was a great solidarity between Muslims and other French people, and racism actually lowered. By any beats necessary, by any remix necessary, those were literally the soundtracks for the nation healing. It captured that moment in France and U.S. history, and it's a powerful piece of art.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and you know, I'm glad you kind of see my point of view on that, because the world can be a scary place wherever you are, but a good soundtrack can kind of help make sense of it. And this pandemic is the worst that we've had in 102 years. But have no fear, because Wax Tailor has new music coming. You know, where there are dark times, there is the light of your music, whether you planned it or not. So, I mean, you must be experiencing slight deja vu a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit, but it's also kind of very different situation. And
R.I.P. to Ty, R.I.P. to Manu Dibango, and I just really hope that
damn, this is so sad, man. This I had the chance to meet this great musician, and yeah, it's a sad period. Everything that we live is fucked up at the moment, but beyond the situation, those people passing, it's just very sad.
I think when this pandemic gets lifted, I think another documentary is in order, because you documented stores, vinyl record stores in the Midwest and the East Coast in the U.S. What about Chile and Mexico and Paris? Because I think that would be interesting, because these are stores and businesses that have survived as well.
That would be very interesting, and I'd love to do that. I'd love to do that. It was just like, let's say, it was an opportunity, and also I've done it in the US because the situation is different from France, for example. In France, we still got the equivalent of Virgin or those kind of big stores you used to have in the US. And the fact is that it's growing and it's changing, but for a period it was more complicated for independent record store owners. And in the US, it was more developed. I mean, you get some more small shops like that, and it was very interesting for me to meet those guys, because most of the time when we talk about the supposed to be record music industry, blah blah blah, it's always about like some A&R. Some people are. It's not to resume and say there's the good guys and the bad guys, but it's never about the people who got some direct contact with some listeners and all that. And it's also a lot about patience. So it was very interesting to have their feedback, their input, and I realized that time is running fast, because it's nearly 5 years now, and it would be interesting to go back after a few years and just have the same kind of discussion to see the evolution.
If I go to the Latin Quarter of Paris, am I going to see mom and pop record stores, or am I going to see like the big Virgin mega stores?
It's better than 10 years ago. Let's say it like that. Weirdly, like for the vinyl especially, you get some more options. In my hometown, for example, like it's a small town. We're like 30,000 people, and we had no record store for 20 years. And there's an independent record store open for 2 years now. So it's great.
Well, in the night, like whenever I visit these record stores, they always have sections, and I know you hate the stamps like chill wave and trip hop, but in the 90s, like whatever you want to call it, but the albums that the mainstream considered paramount to the sounds of the 90s, like Tricky and DJ Shadow, Portishead, Massive Attack, were these in your opinion, were these really the quintessential groups, the sounds that should have received the credit for that? Were there other bands and singers that are underrated that maybe didn't get the exposure or accolades that they deserved in that time?
Okay, those you mentioned, there is no discussion, right? So
from a commercial standpoint, I don't think there is.
Yeah, but there is, for me, there is no discussion when we talk about like Portishead, like Tricky and Shadow and those guys. And yeah, the only problem I got with this stamp, this is supposed to be a trip-hop scene, is that most of the people I know who are supposed to be the more famous trip-hop artists, they don't really like it so much. Like you talk with Jeff Burrow, I know that he's not a huge fan of the trip-hop thing. Trick is not I don't think he considers himself like that. And then the problem for me is more that you've had a lot, and when I say a lot, it's a lot of supposed to be trip-hop artists that were more lounge music, like music for elevators. And that's my main problem. I could resume that most of the supposed to be trip-hop artists I really love, they were just guys coming from the hip-hop culture, once again, like beat makers, just trying to do some different kind of moods. And I don't know. It's and about the question, like underrated, I don't know. Probably, but again, it's kind of weird to say that, because people always think that I got I know more about this kind of scene, but I'm much more involved into the hip hop culture.
That's interesting. Yeah, I guess that's the biggest misconception, and I think you're absolutely right, because in the U.S., I'm even guilty of this. I don't know the difference between trip hop and lounge music. It kind of bleeds together, and I think I think Americans might be a little lazy. Like, if I approach a random
I
stranger
don't
on the
know.
street and I say, "Hey, are you familiar with Jennifer Charles?" It'll probably be met with blank stares. I would have to go, "Do you know Del the Funky Homo
Yeah.
Sapien? Okay, do you know Deltron? Okay, you know the producer of that group? Okay, well, he did a side group called Lovage, and she was in
Yeah.
it." And then by then, I'd probably lose them.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You're right, and it's a lot about this thing. When you talk about you said like I don't know exactly what is trip hop or again. I'm not even sure it's so important. I can understand that some people make some confusion, and you mentioned people like Dan the Automator. For me, it's much more. I feel much more connected with him but because of everything he did and where he's coming from, and I would probably put RJD2 too, or the first album, and I got great respect for RJ. Like I think we got a lot of in common.
Yeah, he was actually on this podcast a couple weeks ago.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, and he was talking to me about he has a young son, and they were listening to Black Sabbath, and his son is able to distinguish the chord changes. And I think we concluded that young kids are probably more music driven than lyric driven. So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot about my first tour in the US 15 years ago. I was opening for RJ, and we had like time to talk and discuss about that, and also about the reference and the digging and everything. So it was very interesting to see the connection. Like it's a lot about that, like the connection and the digging thing.
You also opened for Roots Manuva too back in the day.
Yeah, same period. Exactly.
He was always interesting to me because he has this global fan base. His albums sell hundreds of thousands, but he remains an outsider. His collaborators kind of are away from hip hop. He's collaborated with Gorillaz, Jamie Cullum, the Maccabees, and I would say he's UK's. He's the hip hop's biggest contrarian, and he even admits like this gets harder with age. The process becomes longer. You become more self-conscious. I wanted to know how true that statement was for older musicians. Was there a time when you were really into just the first take, even if it wasn't perfect, and now it's like putting songs through a rowing machine just to see how they last?
I was already a pain in the ass like 15 years ago, so you can imagine how it goes now. So yeah, absolutely. It's for me, like I'm in the process of my sixth album at the moment, and I think it's getting worse and worse. It takes like ages to hit a track and trying few things. And the thing is that it's very complicated because it's always about trying to refresh your music, but staying true to what you are. So it's complicated. It's like a balance, trying to make sure that you get it, like just trying to open doors and making sure you've tried something that you haven't tried before. And I think that most of the time when you get some feedbacks, you realize that half of the people think you do the same thing all the time, and half of the people say you always do different thing. And I think the truth is somewhere between those two realities for me. And the only thing that is true is that it's getting longer and longer for me, like because I'm just searching and wondering, and again, I mean, probably because I'm an awful person when we talk about like judging other people's music. I'm always like I'm really the kind of guy you come when you want to have like the bad feedback. Because I'm kind of honest with that, and but you can be honest with people saying like what you don't like, and not be very hardcore with yourself, like making sure that what you do is supposed to be so it's getting more and more complicated for me. Like it's a big question all the time, saying like, is it really necessary to release that? So for this one, for example, I've made more tracks than usual, and yeah, still in the process, and still wondering, and still asking a lot of questions, and searching for the what is supposed to be the more interesting, and is it really necessary to release that?
Well, I think that coupled with like the misconceptions that, you know, people might think that you're multi-genre is because your music is compatible with Ghostface Killah as it would Tom York. I mean, you have soul singers, techno female vocalists, rappers, they glide over your instrumental seamlessly. Does that make your job more difficult as your creative limitations loosen? Because for, you know, like you take someone like Green Day, they don't have to worry about collaborating with 2 Chainz because their sound fits in a certain lane, whereas you can take your music in many different directions.
Yeah, you're right, but it's my greatest luxury and my worst nightmare at the same time, because as you can imagine, it is just about what you feel like. You know, let's go back to like 20 years ago. I remember when I was handing my collaboration with the band, the rap band I was in, and at this period I had like several projects. Like one was more supposed to be instrumental hip hop, the other one was supposed to be what they would have called trip hop at this period. And I've just realized that I was just bored with this thing about one kind of project, one other kind of project, and I was just thinking, music is life, and for me life is about who you are, and you're not only again, what I'm saying is not to judge people who do like strictly one kind of music, and I'm a huge fan of a lot of cats like that, but I just feel like I really need those different kind of moods. I really need to. I'm very happy when I can walk with Jennifer Charles. I'm very happy when I can walk with Ghostface Killah.
Yo, another day, another dollar. We live legendary. Travel the world by any means necessary. Fresh wallabies, black suede Gucci roll. X marks the spot and I travel the globe. Hit the road, splash the universe. Universally, they call me liquid ghost. I move like mercury. No hurting me, I burn to the 3rd degree.
How much does it take to burn that formula?
Just very different things, but those things are part of me. So I really need to find a balance and create something with that.
And a lot of people might say, well, why not French vocalists? But French is a language for literacy, right?
Oh, yeah. I think it's the best resume you can say. I mean, that's my point of view. Again, like it doesn't mean that some people are not doing it well. I'm just not so comfortable with that. And the other thing is that, as you can hear when we talk, my English is disgusting. And
no, you're good.
and it's the good thing is that, of course, I understand English when I listen to, but it's not my first language. So it's very easy for me to take distance, and the distance make words music. It means that you don't focus so much then about the lyrics once we've talked about the lyrics. And I've realized sometimes, like, I got some tracks that people love a bit more than others, and when they know the lyrics, you're in a show, and at the first row you see some girls and they're just singing the lyrics, and I just watch them and I just feel like I couldn't do that. Because for me it's just some material. It's like just the way when I'm mixing the track with the vocals, I'm not focusing about what the MC is saying at this moment. I'm not focusing about what the singer is singing. I'm just focusing about this vocal instrument and where I'm supposed to put this vocal instrument into the mix.
Yeah, if I go to your Spotify, like the top track by a landslide is K Sarah, and I know like if you're in an interview, a lot of that song is always going to come up. So I want to ask you, because I think you can understand this. If you consider Nas to be one of the top 3 rappers, then you're familiar with his discography and you know that his work is always going to be compared to Illmatic. He can't get away from it. Is Illmatic kind of like your K Sarah? Is that kind of the ghost that you're chasing?
Absolutely, but you know, there is always 2 ways to consider those kind of things. Like some artists, when they got one track that is very famous or whatever, they feel like, oh, come on, give me a break with that. And I'm definitely not this kind of guy, because I feel like some people, they just got their whole life hoping for that. Hoping for that. Plus, there is something else about this track. It's always the story around and how things happened. I remember that when I was in the process, I think it was 2003 when I was working on this track, and you were in a studio and you're building something, and there is a moment when you just stop and you feel like, shit, there's something. And I remember that the first thing I had in mind, because it was the period when we begin to have like some big troubles concerning the sample clearance and all that. And I was just thinking, because I had this Dermot sample, and I was thinking it's gonna be complicated, and I was not into the good side of, oh, this is dope, I like what I'm doing. I was just thinking, shit, it's gonna be some complicated track. And so I just searched for the contact of the publisher who's in charge, blah blah blah. And then I wrote a message just explaining what I was about to do. It was my first release, like auto production on this project. And I think like 20 minutes after, I had an answer like, go ahead, good luck for all, love, Galt. You know what I mean? Like, this is insane. Like, we do talk about like a fucking genius, just anything like that. And then I had the chance to be in contact and talk with him and family. And I mean, it's a good story. To make it short, it's a good story. I've been lucky to do that. Like the first time I came to the US and, for touring in California, I remember the first bar I came into. They were listening to Kesera. I was an independent producer, nothing around, like, like no big marketing or no whatever like that. So it's even better, you know what I mean? It's not like this is huge, but they had all the tools and the weapons to make it happen. So no, it's just like something that's spread and you don't control. I've made like something like 60 countries. Sometimes I'm invited to go and play in a country where, like, most of the people, they don't know about my music. They just come because they're curious, and they enjoy or they don't enjoy. But most of the time they just discover every track. And the moment I play Kesera, I can see in their face like they don't know the name or whatever, but they've heard the track. So that's great. And I think it would be like the wrong lecture to be like, oh shit, don't talk to me about the Kesera. I'm just happy with that, and I'm happy to play it. And I've never felt like, oh no, I don't want to, on this tour, I don't want to play Kesera because it's boring. I just feel like it's a good moment to share with people. And and also there is something very important. I really believe that for weeks, for months, for years, you get some tracks, you walk in a studio, you craft your tracks and everything, and at one point you just release your music. And the moment you release your music, it's not completely your music anymore, because you realize that especially with years passing, people just send you some message, and it's a lot about their own experience, like what it means for them, what they were doing at this period of their life, all those stories. So Kesera is a strong track for that.
I love that, man. You create something and then you release it, and now it belongs to the people, man. It doesn't get any better than that. I think that leads me to present day, JC, where you're dropping something new very soon. And don't worry, this airs after May 27th. So any details, interesting creative processes behind the shadow of their sons, if there's, I'm sure there's something on that record is going to catch fire. It's going to be very huge, very big. I saw the video. I heard the lead single. So, you have the floor if there's anything you wanted to tell the people.
It's been something like maybe 5 years that I've been brainstorming a lot about just thinking about the world and everything. And it's very complicated as an artist, because I don't want to be like giving lessons to people. You know what I mean? Like saying like, here's what you should sing or whatever. But it's not about giving lessons. It's just about giving to think. And I think music, art, whatever, it's a lot about that, like just opening doors, and with your imagination and everything you want to inject, just inviting people to sing the world. I don't know how to express that correctly, but and this album I'm working on, it's a lot about there is a kind of political angle, but not like, again, to give lessons to anybody, just to say something like, open your mind, open your eyes, do something. We need to, everybody, we need to change something. So I don't know how people are gonna receive that. I'm working on it. And again, it's the good thing also about the music is like it always gives a lot of doors. Some people are, I remember about, as an example, like my fourth album, like Dusty Rainbow from the Dark. It was very personal. It was a lot about a story and everything. And I've realized with time that some people, they were very, very concerned about the story and everything behind it, and some other, they were completely about the music and only the music. I'm really okay with that. Like it's just like I said earlier, once you release the music, it's not so much your music anymore. It's just about the everybody's experience. So I don't know what's gonna be the experience with this one, but it means a lot to me. I've been working for 2 years something on this album, and I'm supposed to release it like early 2021.
You know, Celine Dion has the best-selling French album of all time. I need you to break that record, man. I'm rooting for you. That needs a change.
Thank you, man. I'm not sure it's gonna happen, but thank you.
I'm putting it out there in the universe, man. So, but I appreciate you being here, man. I've been a fan for a long time, and it was definitely a pleasure to have you here.
Real pleasure for me. Thank you very much.